Hey guys, hope you're enjoying your day so far. This video is about determining if lines are perpendicular. So just a couple things to recap. This symbol right here means perpendicular, the little upside down T symbol. And basically each of these questions are going to ask you to solve for a variable, and then you're going to have to plug that variable back in to see if the lines do create a 90-degree angle or do not create a 90-degree angle. So there's three main theorems that we are going to use in order to determine if two lines are perpendicular. A couple of things you may want to jot down in addition to these theorems are just the symbol for perpendicular. Remind yourself that if two lines are perpendicular, they form a 90-degree angle. The congruent symbol. So this one says if two lines intersect to form a linear pair of congruent angles, then the lines are perpendicular. And to draw a picture, that would look something like this. So if I have a linear pair and these two angles are congruent, so they would be marked with the little arc marks. Well, we know that a linear pair adds up to 180. So if these two angles add to 180 degrees and they are congruent, the only way for that to happen is if they're both 90 degrees. Theorem number 2 says if two sides of two adjacent angles are perpendicular, then the angles are complementary. So to give you a little picture for this one, say I have two adjacent angles like this, and two sides of those angles, so not the common side, but the two non-common sides, if these two form a 90-degree angle, if they're perpendicular, then those angles must be complementary. They must add to 90 degrees. And the third theorem says if two lines are perpendicular, then they intersect to form four right angles. So if I gave you two lines and said these are perpendicular, I know that's a right angle, that's a right angle, that's a right angle, and that is also a right angle. Go ahead and jot down this example. See how far you can get on your own, and then when you get to a place when you're stuck, click resume and pick up wherever I am. So this example is asking us to do two things. First, find the value of x, then using that value, determine if the lines are perpendicular. So you always want to look at the relationship between the two given angles. So the relationship would be that the 3x minus 7 and the 9x minus 179, those two angles are a linear pair, which means that they are supplementary. So the relationship is they're a linear pair, which means that they must be supplementary, which means that they must add up to 180. So identifying the relationship of the two given angles is going to then help you write an equation. So my equation is going to read 3x minus 7 plus 9x minus 179 must equal 180 degrees. Now I'm going to combine my like terms. So 3x and 9x give me 12x. Negative 179 minus 7 gives me a negative 186. So that must equal 180 degrees. Now I'm going to continue solving for x. So go ahead and pause. You guys know how to solve for x from here. Click play when you're ready to keep going. So I got for the value of x 30.5. Now what I want to do is plug that into each of these angles to see if they are indeed congruent. If they're 90 degrees, then the lines are perpendicular. If they are not 90 degrees, they're not congruent, then the lines are not perpendicular. When I plugged in my value for x for both of the given angles, I got 84.5 degrees and 95.5 degrees. So first of all, you want to check to make sure that those are indeed supplementary, because if they're not, that means you did something wrong. So when I add those up together, I do get 180 degrees. So I'm good to go there, but they are not congruent. they are not equal to 90. So what that tells me is that AB is not perpendicular to CD. Go ahead and jot down example number 2, which is the same question, find the value of x, and then determine if AB is perpendicular to CD. So again, you have to note this symbol means perpendicular. It may not be written out in words. So first step is always find the relationship between the two marked angles. So right now I'm noticing that these two angles are across from one another. Their sides are forming opposite rays or straight lines, if you want to think of it that way, which means that these angles must be vertical angles. So start thinking about what do we know about vertical angles, and then you want to set up an equation. I'm setting these equal to one another because we know that vertical angles are congruent. And so now I want to solve for x, take that value for x and plug it back in to see if these lines are indeed perpendicular. So I'll let you guys go ahead and do that, and then at the end, see how well you did. So here I got my value for x is equal to 40, and then when I plug it back in, I do in fact get 90 degrees for both of those angles, which means that these lines must be perpendicular because they form right angles. Here's a couple conclusions that might help some of you guys step-by-step process when solving these types of questions. The key is to always look for relationships of angle pairs, and that's what we've been practicing all the last week. So supplementary linear pairs, complementary right angles, and vertical angles are all things that should be on your radar whenever you're doing a problem like this. Once you've figured out the relationship, then you always want to set up an equation. Either they're going to add up to 180, add to 90, or set them equal to each other depending on the relationship. Then once you solve for x, you can plug it back in to see if the angles equal 90 degrees. If they are, the lines are perpendicular. If not, then they are not perpendicular. Hope this video helped you guys out in determining if lines are perpendicular. If not, feel free to click some of the extra links that are listed on my website. They might help you out further.